Good morning, guys. I'm going to go over your math work for today's NTI work. And before I get started, I just want to review a little bit with you. So this first question is asking you, what is the length of the shaded part of the meter stick in centimeters? Well, initially you might have thought, well, dang, I need to get a ruler and measure out how many centimeters that is. Well, you don't, because you already know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. Now they've shaded in 1/10 of this meter stick. So how many centimeters would equal 1/10 of 100? That's going to help you figure that out, okay? Now you're going to take that information and you're going to apply it to this question here. You can see that they have cut or partitioned the 1/10 part into 10 tiny pieces. So now think about how many of these really tiny pieces you would need to shade in to fill in the entire meter stick. Okay, they started with 1/10 and then they cut that 1/10 piece into 10 smaller pieces. How many of those smaller pieces would you need to fill in the entire meter stick? Think about that, okay? And that's going to help you. And then remember, for decimals, for place value, remember you have, here's your decimal point to the right of the decimal. And I'm doing this with, we're going to start with tenths. Okay, then you have hundredths, right? And then you have thousandths. Okay, and I'll add the S on there to each one of those. Okay, so remember that's your decimal place value: tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, all right. This one down here, number 3. You can see that 1/10 of a meter is what this represents, right? Then they added 3 100ths. These are hundredths. And we know 1/10 of a meter plus 300ths of a meter is 13 100ths. Because remember, 1/10 is 10 100ths. So 10 100ths plus 3 100ths would be 13 hundredths. And then to put that in decimal form, you have this one right here, okay? And then they added this over here for you. 1/10 plus 3 100ths. That's your 10th right there. There's your 3 100ths. Now, I realize that this is on here and you don't really have to do anything. This is just a model to show you how you would add tenths plus 100ths. Okay, and they did that right over here. So if I wanted to add, let's say, 2 tenths plus 4 100ths, and I would put that in decimal form, it would look like this. Here's my decimal. 2 tenths, well, I know the tenths place is right here. It's the first number to the right of the decimal. So I'm going to put a 2 right here because it's 2 tenths. And then hundredths is the second place to the right of the decimal. So I would put my 4 right here. And that would equal 24 100ths. And that would be the same as thinking like, if I have 24 cents, I have 24 hundredths of a dollar. Okay? Just another way to look at it, some more information. So that's your decimal stuff. Here's your fraction stuff. This one's pretty simple. So we have a figure right here, okay? Now, look at this entire figure. It's been partitioned 2 different ways, right? We have fourths going up and down like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 1/4, right? Okay? But now, they also have it cut another way because they took all of those fourths and they cut them in half. So now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So you have 1/4 or 2/8 shaded in. Okay, so over here, when you write this out as the directions ask, draw horizontal lines to decompose each rectangle. So they started with just fourths, and then they drew this dotted line, that's your horizontal, left to right, to decompose it. Use the model to give the shaded area as both the sum of unit fractions and as a multiplication sentence. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. 1/4 equals, and we just did that over here. We had a fourth, and then we partitioned it by drawing our horizontal line, and we created eighths. So 1/4 equals 2/8. So 1/4 equals 1/8 plus what? 1/8 plus what equals 2/8? You guessed it, 1/8 plus 1/8 equals 2/8. Now we're going to make a multiplication sentence to show the same amount. Well, 1/4 equals 2 times. Well, what two things do you need to make 1/8? Well, look at your model. 1/8 plus 1/8 is 2/8. So 2 times 1/8 equals, that's the same as 1/8 plus 1/8, just like we already did, because remember, repeated addition and multiplication go together. So 2 times 1/8 is 2/8. All right? So you're going to do the same thing on these. I'm going to go ahead and do this for you to show you. You want to draw that horizontal line, okay? So you're going to have two different fractions just like we had up here that are equivalent. All right? So think about, what fraction does this show right now? 1 out of how many parts are shaded in? On this one, before I drew that horizontal line, 1 out of how many parts were shaded in? Okay, and then I drew my line, and I thought, all right, how many parts are shaded in now? And then I wrote my fraction, okay? So use this first one as a model to help you with B and C.